The night train to the Highlands. A Victorian steam journey. Close your eyes for a moment and let yourself drift backward through time. It is late autumn in the year 1895, and the city of London lies beneath a veil of coal, smoke, and gaslight, the great heart of an empire that spans half the world. But tonight you are leaving all of that behind. Tonight you will board a train that will carry you through the darkness, across the length of England, over the border into Scotland, and finally to that wild and beautiful country they call the Highlands. This is not simply a journey from one place to another. This is an experience, a voyage through the night aboard one of the finest expressions of Victorian engineering and luxury. A palace on wheels that moves to the steady, hypnotic rhythm of iron wheels on iron rails. The year is drawing toward its close, and with it comes that peculiar quality of light that belongs only to November evenings in London, dusky amber glow that seems to emanate from the very bricks and cobblestones, filtered through layers of mist and chimney smoke. The streets are alive with the clatter of hansoms and the calls of newspaper sellers. But all of this will soon fade into memory as you leave the metropolis behind. Your destination lies in the north, in those mountains and glens where the air is sharp and clean, where ancient forests cling to steep hillsides, and where lochs lie like shards of dark glass among the heather-covered moors. But first, you must make your way to the station, to that great iron and glass cathedral of progress, known as King's Cross. The journey begins not on the train itself, but in the anticipation, in the preparations, in the careful packing of your travelling trunk, and the selection of reading material for the long night ahead. Perhaps a novel, something by Hardy or Kipling, or possibly one of the illustrated magazines that have become so popular in these closing years of the century. You have arranged for a first-class sleeping compartment, a private sanctuary where you will pass the night in comfort as the train carries you northward. The reservation has been confirmed, your ticket secured, and now, as evening settles over the city like a familiar blanket, it is time to make your way to the station. The station at night, King's Cross, 1895 King's Cross Station, rises before you out of the evening gloom like a monument to the age of steam and iron. Built just over 40 years ago in 1852, the station has become one of the great terminals of London, the southern anchor of the East Coast Main Line that stretches all the way to Edinburgh and beyond. But what strikes you first, even before you enter, is not its grandeur, for King's Cross was designed with utilitarian purpose rather than ornament, but its sheer scale. The way it dominates this corner of North London with an almost industrial confidence. The facade is simple, almost austere by the standards of its neighbours. Two great arched windows, each 60 feet across, are set into a plain brick wall, their glass reflecting the gas flames that flicker in the street lamps outside. Between these twin arches stands a clock tower, square and unadorned, rising more than 100 feet into the darkening sky. The clock face glows with a warm yellow light, its hands showing 20 minutes past 7 in the evening. Your train departs at 8 o'clock sharp, which gives you time, but not too much time, to find your platform and settle into your compartment before the journey begins. You step through the entrance and into the great train shed, and immediately the atmosphere changes. The noise strikes you, first a constant symphony of sound that echoes and re-echoes beneath the vast arched roof, the hiss of steam escaping from locomotive safety valves, the sharp metallic clang of coupling chains, the rumble of luggage trolleys on the platform, the calls of porters and the murmur of hundreds of conversations blending into a continuous hum of human activity. The air itself is thick with the smell of coal smoke, hot metal, and machine oil, mixed with the sharper scents of tobacco and perfume from the passengers who crowd the concourse. Above you, the roof soars into darkness, its iron ribs disappearing into shadow. Two parallel train sheds stretch northward for nearly 250 yards, each one covered by a gracefully curving roof of iron and glass. In daylight, these roofs would emit a diffuse, shadowless illumination, but now, at night, the glass panels are black mirrors reflecting the lights below. Gas lamps mounted on iron brackets cast pools of warm yellow light along the platforms, creating dramatic patterns of brightness and shadow. Steam from the locomotives drifts upward in lazy columns, catching the light and creating an almost theatrical atmosphere, as though you have entered not a railway station, but some vast, dimly lit stage where a great drama is about to unfold. Your trunk has been sent ahead by the hotel, and you carry only a small leather valise containing your immediate necessities, your night clothes, toiletries, a book, perhaps a small silver flask of brandy for later in the night. You consult your ticket. Platform 3, the Night Scotsman to Edinburgh, with carriages continuing to Inverness. First-class sleeper, compartment B. The porter at the gate examines your ticket with professional efficiency, his brass buttons gleaming in the gaslight, and directs you with a nod toward the platform where your train awaits. As you walk along the platform, you pass the third-class carriages first. These are simpler affairs, though still respectably appointed, with wooden benches that will later convert into sleeping berths. Curtains drawn across open sections rather than the private compartments of first class. Families are settling in, mothers arranging bags and baskets, fathers consulting timetables, children pressed against the windows in excitement. Further along come the second-class carriages, a compromise between economy and comfort. And then, at last, you reach the domain of first class, where the carriages display a different character entirely. The coaches here are painted in a deep burgundy, with gold lettering proclaiming them to be the property of the Great Northern Railway. They stand higher off the tracks than the third-class carriages, mounted on six-wheeled bogies that promise a smoother ride. The windows are larger, and through them you can see the warm glow of gas lighting within. A conductor in a spotless uniform stands at the door of your carriage, and as you approach, he touches his cap respectfully. "Good evening, sir," he says, his voice carrying the pleasant formality of professional service. "Compartment B, is it? Right this way, if you please." He takes your valise and gestures toward the iron steps that lead up into the carriage. You grasp the brass handrails, smooth and cool beneath your palm, and climb aboard, leaving the noise and bustle of the platform behind. The sanctuary, your private compartment. The corridor runs the length of the carriage, narrow but well lit, with a thick carpet runner that muffles your footsteps. The walls are panelled in mahogany, polished to a deep, reflective sheen, with brass fittings that gleam like gold in the gaslight. Every few feet, a door opens into a sleeping compartment, each one a private world, a sanctuary from the chaos of travel. The conductor moves ahead of you with the practiced ease of one who has made this walk 1,000 times, and stops before a door marked with a brass letter B. He produces a key, unlocks the door, and swings it open with a flourish. "Your compartment, sir. Should you require anything during the night, the bell pull is just here." He indicates a braided cord near the door, "and I shall be in the service compartment at the end of the carriage. We shall be departing in 15 minutes, and the dining car will be serving until 10:30. May I arrange for your trunk to be delivered to your hotel in Inverness? You assure him that the arrangements have already been made. Press a coin into his palm and watch as he withdraws with a bow, pulling the door shut behind him. And now, for the first time, you are alone in your compartment, and you can truly appreciate the remarkable attention to detail that has been lavished on this small space. The compartment is perhaps 6 feet wide and 7 feet long, but every inch has been designed for maximum comfort and utility. The outside wall, which faces the platform, is dominated by a large window with thick green curtains that can be drawn for privacy. Currently, they are tied back and through the glass. You can see the activity on the platform continuing, last passengers hurrying aboard, porters loading final pieces of luggage, station staff making their final checks. The glass itself is remarkably thick and clear, the product of modern manufacturing techniques that have made train travel increasingly comfortable to your right. Occupying most of the length of the compartment is the sleeping arrangement itself. During the day, or in this case during the evening before it is time to retire, it appears as an elegant sofa upholstered in green Morocco leather, deeply buttoned and surprisingly comfortable. Above it, folded up against the wall and concealed behind a mahogany panel, is the upper berth. When the time comes for sleep, the conductor will enter and perform a remarkable transformation. The sofa cushions will be removed and repositioned to form the base of the lower berth. The upper berth will be unfolded from the wall on a system of brass hinges and supports, and both will be made up with crisp white linens, wool blankets, and soft pillows. Heavy curtains will be drawn across both berths, providing privacy even within the privacy of the locked compartment. But for now, you settle onto the sofa and take stock of your surroundings. Opposite the sofa, the inner wall of the compartment holds a series of clever built-in features. A small folding table, currently secured against the wall, can be lowered to provide a surface for writing or dining. Below it is a miniature sink with a porcelain basin, fed by a small copper tap connected to a water tank above. The water is cold, naturally, but perfectly adequate for washing. Above the sink is a mirror, framed in polished wood, and on either side of it, small gas lamps with frosted glass shades provide illumination. The lamps have been carefully designed to remain stable even when the train is moving, their flames protected by glass chimneys. To the left of the sink is a narrow wardrobe, just wide enough to hang a coat and hat. Below it, a small cupboard holds a chamber pat a necessity on long journeys, though there is also a proper water closet at the end of the carriage for those who prefer not to use such intimate facilities. Above the wardrobe, a mesh luggage rack holds your valise, secured in place by a leather strap. Every surface is either mahogany or leather, brass or beveled glass. Even the door handle is a work of craftsmanship, a curved brass lever that fits perfectly in the palm. The attention to detail extends to the smallest elements. The coat hooks are brass, shaped like curved fingers. The window latch is designed to allow the window to be opened to any height, letting in fresh air without rattling. The door frame is padded with leather strips to prevent noise when the door closes. Even the carpet on the floor is thick enough to absorb sound, creating an atmosphere of hushed tranquility. This is not merely a means of transportation. This is a traveling hotel room, a mobile sanctuary designed to insulate you from the noise and discomfort of the journey itself. You rise and lower the table from the wall, testing its mechanism. It swings down smoothly, held in place by brass brackets that lock with a satisfying click. The surface is leather-covered, tooled with a decorative border, and large enough to hold a book, a small lamp, and a teacup without crowding. You experiment with the gas lamps, turning the valve to adjust the flame. The light brightens and dims obediently, casting a warm, golden glow that is both bright enough to read by and soft enough to be restful. Through the window, you see the platform is nearly empty now. A few late arrivals are hurrying toward the rear carriages, their breath visible in the cold November air. The station clock shows 5 minutes to 8. Soon, very soon, the train will begin to move. You remove your overcoat and hang it in the narrow wardrobe, then settle back onto the sofa with your book. But you do not open it yet. Instead, you watch through the window, waiting for that first subtle indication that the journey has begun. Departure, leaving London behind, begins almost imperceptibly. You do not hear the conductor's whistle from the platform. The compartment is too well insulated for that, but you feel a gentle vibration travel through the floor. A tremor that announces the locomotive is awakening from its rest. Somewhere far ahead, beyond your sight, the driver is opening the regulator, admitting steam into the cylinders. The great pistons begin to move, slowly at first, pushing and pulling the connecting rods that turn the massive driving wheels. These wheels, easily 6 feet in diameter, are works of art in themselves, their spokes radiating from polished steel hubs, their rims wearing a thin contact surface of hardened iron that will roll over hundreds of miles of track before this night is done. The first movement is backward, just a few inches, as the slack is taken up between the carriages. You hear it more than feel it, a series of gentle bumps traveling down the length of the train as each coupling chain goes taut. Then comes the forward movement, smooth and steady, as the locomotive begins to work in earnest. The platform begins to slide past your window, slowly at first, the speed of a walking man, then a running man, then faster still until the individual gas lamps blur into a continuous stream of light. You are moving. The journey has begun. The train emerges from beneath the great arched roof of the station and into the open air. Though open is a relative term in this part of London, the air is still thick with coal smoke from 10,000 chimneys, still hazy with the particular fog that Londoners have learned to accept as part of their city's character. But gradually, as the train picks up speed, the buildings begin to change. The close-backed warehouses and tenements near the station give way to more respectable residential streets, their gaslit windows glowing like lanterns in the gloom. You catch glimpses of people moving behind those windows, of family at dinner, a man reading his newspaper, a maid drawing curtains for the night, each one a tiny vignette of domestic life. Here and gone in an instant. The rhythm begins to establish itself now, that fundamental heartbeat of train travel that will accompany you through the night. It is a complex sound built from multiple layers. The deepest layer is the rumble of the wheels on the rails, a continuous rolling thunder that seems to rise up through the very bones of the carriage. Overlaying this is the regular clicking of the rail joints, that steady clack-clack-clack that marks the passage of each 60-foot section of track. The rails themselves are not yet continuously welded. That innovation lies decades in the future, and so the wheels must traverse a tiny gap at each joint, creating that rhythmic percussion that becomes, after a time, almost hypnotic. There are other sounds too, subtler but no less important to the overall symphony. The whisper of air flowing past the windows, growing louder as the train accelerates. The faint creaking of the carriage's wooden frame as it sways gently on its springs. The occasional metallic squeal as the train rounds a curve and the wheel flanges press against the rails. And beneath it all, like a distant pulse, The exhaust beats of the locomotive dash poof dash poof dash poof dash poof dash 4 beats per revolution of the driving wheels. Powerful and steady. The sound of controlled industrial strength propelling this small world through the darkness. You stand and move to the window, resting your hands on the cool glass. The suburban sprawl of North London stretches out on either side of the track now. Miles of brick houses and factory buildings, church spires and gasworks, the whole vast complex machinery of modern urban life. Here and there, you see other trains' local services shuttling commuters home from the city. Goods trains laden with coal or timber or manufactured goods. The railways have woven themselves into the fabric of British life so thoroughly that it is hard now to imagine how the country functioned before their advent. Hard to remember that your grandfather's generation grew up in a world where the fastest way to travel was on horseback. The train's speed continues to build. You estimate you are traveling at perhaps 30 or 35 miles per hour now. Fast enough that individual buildings have become a blur. Fast enough that you have to focus on distant objects to make out any detail. The sensation is strange. You are sitting perfectly still in your comfortable compartment. Yet you are traveling faster than a galloping horse, faster than any human being could run, cutting through the landscape with a power and speed that would have been literally unimaginable to anyone living just 100 years ago. As the train pushes further north, the buildings begin to thin. Gaps appear between the houses, first just alleys and courtyards, then proper gardens, then open spaces where sheep or cattle graze in fields that somehow survive amid the urban sprawl. The gas lamps become less frequent, the glow of the city begins to fade, and gradually, almost imperceptibly, you leave London behind. The darkness deepens. Without the constant illumination of street lamps and house windows, the night asserts itself, becoming not just an absence of light, but a presence in its own right. The window of your compartment becomes a mirror, reflecting your own face and the warm interior behind you. To see out, you must press close to the glass and cup your hands around your eyes, blocking the internal light. When you do this, the external world reveals itself, dark fields rolling away to an invisible horizon. The occasional farmhouse with a single lighted window. The silhouette of trees against a sky that is just barely lighter than the earth below and overhead. Though you cannot see them from inside the train, the stars are beginning to emerge. This far from the city, on a clear November night, they would be brilliant. Diamond-sharp points of light scattered across the heavens in their thousands. But you will see them later, perhaps, if you step out onto the platform during one of the brief stops that will punctuate the night. For now, you are content to watch the darkness flow past, to feel the gentle rocking of the carriage, to listen to the endless song of wheel on rail. The compartment has grown warm. Steam heating, piped from the locomotive through insulated pipes that run beneath the carriage floor, has raised the temperature to a comfortable level, driving away the November chill. It is one of the modern improvements that has made long-distance rail travel truly pleasant. 20 years ago, passengers had to rely on hot water bottles and heavy blankets. Now, with steam heating, the carriages remain comfortable even in the depths of winter. You glance at your pocket watch. 8:30. The dining car is open, and you have not eaten since the light tea at your hotel before departure. The thought of a proper meal, served in civilized surroundings while the train carries you through the night, is suddenly very appealing. You check your appearance in the mirror, collar straight, hair reasonably tidy, and step out into the corridor. The dining car, a moving restaurant, the corridor runs the length of the carriage, and as you make your way forward, you pass other compartments. Most of the doors are closed, their occupants already settled in for the night. But here and there, a door stands ajar, revealing a gentleman reading by lamplight or a couple engaged in quiet conversation. The carpet beneath your feet is thick and soft, absorbing sound, and the mahogany panels that line the walls gleam with the deep luster of careful polishing. Brass fixtures catch the light from the gas. Lamps mounted at regular intervals along the ceiling dot at the end of the carriage. A heavy door leads to the vestibule, that ingenious invention that allows passengers to move safely from one carriage to another. The vestibule is one of George Pullman's innovations, first introduced in 1887 and now standard on all better-class trains. Before its invention, passengers had to wait until the train stopped to move between carriages, or risk their lives on narrow external running boards. Now, an enclosed passage connects the carriages, with flexible bellows that compress and expand as the train sways, and spring-loaded steel plates that cover the gap between carriages. You push through the heavy door into the vestibule. The sound of the train is suddenly much louder. Hear the rumble of wheels, the rush of wind, the clatter of the coupling chains. The bellows flex and compress as the carriages rock gently on their springs. The movement more pronounced here than in the stable interior of the compartment. You cross quickly to the next door, pull it open, and enter the second-class carriages. The contrast is subtle but noticeable. The corridor here is narrower, the paneling perhaps a shade less glossy, the carpet slightly thinner. The compartments visible through the open doors are smaller, set up for 4 passengers rather than the 2 of first class. But they are still respectable, still comfortable, far better than anything your grandfather would have experienced in his youth. The railway companies compete fiercely for custom, and even second class has benefited from this rivalry. With standards rising year by year, you continue forward through 2 more carriages, passing through another vestibule where the night air whistles through the gaps in the bellows, bringing with it the smell of coal smoke and hot oil. And then, finally, you reach the dining car. The dining car is a revelation, a small miracle of engineering and design. How they managed to create a proper restaurant in a railway carriage, a space that must roll and sway with every curve of the track, has always seemed to you almost like magic. But here it is, as elegant and well-appointed as any dining room in a good London hotel. The car is approximately 40 feet long and divided into 2 sections. The far end, barely visible through the doorway at the opposite end, is the kitchen or galley, as the railwaymen call it, borrowing the naval term. There, in a space barely 6 feet wide, a team of cooks prepares 3-course meals for dozens of passengers, working with a coal-fired stove that must be kept level no matter how the train moves. It is a feat that requires considerable skill and no small amount of courage. The dining section, where you now stand, has been arranged with 12 small tables, 6 on each side of a central aisle. Each table is set for 2, though some can be expanded to accommodate 4 if necessary. The tables are not fixed to the floor, but rather are mounted on gimbals and springs, allowing them to remain relatively level even when the carriage rocks. The white tablecloths are spotless, weighted at the corners to prevent them from sliding. The china is railway china, specially designed with wider bases and shorter walls to prevent tipping. The glasses are held in small holes drilled into wooden blocks, secured until they are needed. Everything, from the salt cellars to the flower vase in the center of each table, has been designed to remain in place despite the movement of the train. The lighting here is brighter than in the sleeping cars, with gas lamps set into brass fixtures along both walls. The walls themselves are panelled in a lighter wood than the mahogany of the sleeping. Cars perhaps, oak or ashand, decorated with prints showing rural British scenes, a thatched cottage in the Cotswolds, a Scottish loch with mountains beyond, a Welsh valley with sheep grazing on steep hillsides. The ceiling is painted cream and ornamented with decorative mouldings, giving the space an almost domestic feeling, as though you have stepped not into a railway carriage but into a small, elegant restaurant that happens to be travelling at 40 miles per hour through the English countryside. A steward approaches, older than the conductor, with grey hair and a manner that suggests he has spent decades in service. His black coat is impeccably pressed, his white shirt crisp, his manner perfectly balanced between respectful and confident. "Good evening, sir. A table for one. This way, if you please." He leads you to a table near the center of the car, pulls out one of the chairs upholstered in green Morocco leather to match the sleeping compartments and presents you with a menu. The menu is printed on thick cream-colored cardstock, the type beautifully ornate, listing dishes that would not be out of place in a fine London restaurant. You are offered a choice of soup's oxtail or white vegetable, followed by fish fresh, salmon with caper, sauce or meat, roast beef, mutton chops, or chicken pie. There are side dishes of roasted potatoes and peas, and for dessert, plum pudding or cabinet pudding or cheese with biscuits. You make your selection, and the steward nods approvingly before withdrawing to the galley. While you wait, you take the opportunity to observe your fellow diners. The car is perhaps 2/3 full, mostly gentlemen traveling alone or in pairs, though there is one family group, husband and wife with a boy of about 10, who keeps pressing his face to the window, trying to see into the darkness. Most of the passengers are dressed formally, as one would be for dinner at any respectable establishment. The men wear dinner jackets or frock coats. The ladies, the few who are present, wear traveling dresses in subdued colors, appropriate for dining en route. The conversation is quiet, a gentle murmur barely audible over the constant rhythm of the train. There is something about eating in a dining car that encourages hushed voices, a sense that one is engaged in something faintly daring, slightly adventurous. After all, just a generation ago, the very idea of taking a meal while traveling at speed would have seemed absurd, if not dangerous. Now it is commonplace. Yet the novelty has not entirely worn off. The steward returns with a bottle of claret and a glass, pours a measure for your approval. You taste it. It is good, very good, better than you had expected. Railway wine is sometimes indifferent, but the Great Northern Railway has clearly taken care with its selection. The steward fills your glass, places the bottle on the table in its special holder, a brass ring mounted on a weighted base that keeps the bottle upright, departs once more. The soup arrives, served in a deep bowl with high sides to prevent spilling. It is oxtail, rich and dark, with vegetables cut into precise dice. You take a spoonful, and it is hot, perfectly seasoned, as good as anything you might get at your club. How they manage to produce such food in that tiny galley, with the train swaying and the stove rocking, is a mystery you do not care to solve. It is enough that they do. As you eat, you become aware of the way the movement of the train affects the experience. The gentle rocking is not disruptive, but rather adds a subtle rhythm to each action. Lifting the spoon to your lips requires a tiny adjustment for the sway of the carriage. The wine in your glass tilts first one way, then the other. Though it never spills, the glass is too skillfully balanced for that. Outside the windows, the darkness flows past, occasionally broken by a flash of light from a station or a crossing keeper's cottage, but mostly featureless, a moving void that somehow makes the warm, well-lit interior of the dining car seem even more cozy and secure. The fish course follows the soup, the promised salmon. Perfectly cooked, its flesh pink and flaking easily under your fork. The caper sauce is tangy and bright, cutting through the richness of the fish. The roasted potatoes are crisp outside and fluffy within. The peas are fresh, not the tinned variety that have become all too common. This is proper cooking, the kind that requires skill and attention, made all the more impressive by the circumstances under which it is prepared. You finish your meal with the plum pudding, dense and sweet, served with a small jug of custard. The steward offers coffee, which you accept, and it arrives in a small silver pot, accompanied by a cup and saucer of fine china. The coffee is strong and hot, with a slight bitterness that is entirely appropriate after such a rich meal. As you sip your coffee, you check your pocket watch again. 9:30. You have been dining for nearly an hour, and in that time the train has carried you far from London. You are somewhere in the Midlands now, though exactly where would be impossible to say. The landscape beyond the windows is entirely dark, offering no clues. But you know from studying the timetable that the train will pass through Peterborough and Grantham, through Newark and Retford, through Doncaster and York, following the Great North Road in its broad sweep towards Scotland. These names are milestones on your journey, though you will sleep through most of them, waking only if the train makes one of its brief stops. You settle your bill. The steward presents it on a small silver tray and leave a tip appropriate to the quality of the service. Then you make your way back through the swaying vestibules, back through the second-class carriages, back to your own sleeping car and the sanctuary of your private compartment. The long night, the rhythm of the rails. When you return to your compartment, you find it has been transformed. The sofa where you sat before departure has been disassembled, its cushions removed and repositioned. The mahogany panel on the wall above has been unfolded, revealing the upper berth with its framework of iron and brass. Both berths have been made up with fresh linen sheets so white they almost glow in the gaslight. Blankets of dark green wool, pillows in crisp cotton cases. Heavy curtains of green velvet have been hung across each berth, creating two separate chambers within the compartment. The transformation has been accomplished with such efficiency and silence that you heard nothing from the dining car. Your valise has been removed from the luggage rack and placed on the lower berth, opened so that you can easily access its contents. The conductor has thought of everything, even drawing the window curtains part way to provide privacy while still allowing you to see out if you wish. On the small folding table, which has been lowered into position, sits a carafe of fresh water and a glass, and a small dish containing 2 wrapped peppermints. You undress, removing your collar and tie, your coat and waistcoat. The compartment is warm, almost too warm after the rich meal and wine, and you crack the window open an inch, allowing a thin stream of cold night air to enter. The sound of the train becomes louder. Immediately the rumble and clatter that has been muffled by the thick glass now fills the compartment. Not unpleasantly loud, but definitely present. A constant reminder of the journey continuing through the darkness. You stand at the window for a moment, peering out into the night. The moon has risen since you boarded, not quite full, but bright enough to cast shadows. By its light, you can make out the shape of the landscape, rolling fields, hedgerows dividing them into a patchwork, the occasional farmhouse, dark and sleeping. Once, you catch a glimpse of a river, its surface reflecting the moonlight like hammered silver, and then it is gone, left behind in an instant as the train rushes onward. The upper berth is tempting. There is something appealing about sleeping in that elevated position, like a child in a tree house, but you have chosen the lower berth for the simple reason that it is easier to get in and out of during the night. You climb between the sheets, which are cool against your skin, and arrange the pillows to support your head and shoulders. The mattress is firmer than a hotel bed, but not uncomfortable, and the rocking of the train as it moves provides a gentle, cradling sensation, like being in a ship at sea, though without the possibility of actual seas, sickness. You lie back and consider reading, but find you have no real desire to do so. The book remains unopened on the small shelf beside your head. Instead, you simply lie still, eyes open, listening to the night sounds of the train, feeling the rhythm of its movement, allowing your mind to drift. The rhythm is everything. It pervades every aspect of the experience, entering through your ears and your skin, and even, it seems, through your very bones. The deepest layer is the continuous rumble, low-pitched and powerful, a sound you feel as much as hear. Over this lies the clicking of the rail joints, precise and regular, marking time like a metronome set to some impossible tempo. Clack-clack, 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 on and on. Never varying, never stopping, each click representing 60 feet of track sliding beneath the wheels. Each series of clicks representing another mile closer to Scotland, to the Highlands, to your destination. And there are subtler sounds, too, ones that emerge only when you lie quiet and listen. The creak of the carriage's wooden frame as it flexes on the curves, the faint whistle of the wind around the window frame, the occasional sharp sound of gravel thrown up from the track bed striking the underside of the carriage. And, if you listen very carefully, you can hear the locomotive itself, far ahead but still audible. Its exhaust beats steady and powerful, its whistle sounding occasionally as it approaches a crossing or a station. The train is travelling faster now than it was through the outskirts of London. These northern sections of the line are built for speed, with gentle curves and proper signalling, and the driver is making good time. You estimate the train is travelling at least 50 miles per hour, possibly more on the straight sections. At this speed, the rocking becomes more pronounced, a gentle side-to-side sway that is actually rather soothing. It is not uncomfortable or disorienting, just a reminder that you are moving through space at considerable velocity, that the fixed point of your bed is actually moving, travelling, carrying you ever northward. You turn down the gas lamps, reducing their flames to tiny blue flickers that provide just enough light to prevent total darkness. The compartment falls into shadow, illuminated only by the moonlight filtering through the gap in the curtains. You close your eyes and feel yourself beginning to drift, that pleasant sliding sensation as consciousness begins to loosen its grip, as the boundaries between waking and sleeping start to blur. But sleep does not come immediately. Your mind, stimulated by the novel experience and the rich meal, resists the pull toward unconsciousness. Instead, you find yourself in that strange in-between state, aware of the train but also aware of your own thoughts, your memories and plans mixing with half-formed dreams and random associations. You think about the journey ahead, about reaching the Highlands in the morning. You have been there before, of course, on shooting parties in autumn, but never in this way, never arriving by night train after sleeping aboard. There is something romantic about it, something that appeals to the part of you that still loves adventure, despite the comfortable respectability of your middle years. You are not going to climb mountains or explore unmapped glens. You are going for business, or perhaps for a rest cure, or to visit relatives. But still, the manner of your arrival has an element of adventure to it. A sense that you are not merely traveling from one point to another, but are participating in something larger. Something that partakes of progress and modernity and all those Victorian virtues you were raised to admire. The train begins to slow, its rhythm changing subtly as the driver eases back on the regulator and applies the brakes. You open your eyes and check your watch. 11:15. This must be York, the first major stop on the journey north. The train will pause here for perhaps 10 minutes, changing crews, taking on coal and water, while passengers board or disembark. You could get out, stretch your legs on the platform, but the thought of leaving the warmth and comfort of your berth is unappealing. Instead, you lie still and listen to the sounds of arrival. The rumble of the wheels changes pitch as the train passes over a set of points. The metallic clatter of the switch mechanism audible even over the general noise. The train continues to slow, and now you can hear voices outside porters calling to one another, passengers on the platform waiting to board. The brakes squeal softly as the train comes to a halt, and suddenly the constant forward motion ceases. For a moment, the stillness is almost shocking, like a silence after constant noise, though of course the train is not silent. The locomotive continues to hiss and breathe at the head of the train, steam escaping from various valves, the firebox radiating heat into the cold November night. You part the curtains slightly and look out. The platform at York is long and well lit, its gas lamps casting a bright glow over the scene. Porters are already opening carriage doors and helping passengers with their luggage. A man in a heavy overcoat stands beneath a lamp, checking his watch against the station clock. A family huddles together, the children half asleep on their feet, waiting to board. At the far end of the platform, you can see the locomotive, its massive bulk wreathed in steam, the glow of the firebox visible when the fireman opens the door to add more coal. Even from here, you can see the controlled power of the machine, the way it seems to strain against its brakes, eager to be moving again. The stop is brief. Within 10 minutes, a whistle sounds somewhere down the platform. Doors slam shut. There is a moment of anticipation, and then, with a gentle jolt, the train begins to move once more. The platform slides past your window, gathering speed, and then you are clear of the station and back into the open countryside. The lights of York falling away behind, the darkness closing in once more. You let the curtain fall back into place and settle yourself more comfortably in the berth. The train quickly regains its cruising speed, the rhythm re-establishing itself, that eternal clack-clack-clack of wheels on rails that will continue through the night. You close your eyes again, and this time, sleep comes more easily. Through the border country you sleep, though not deeply. It is the kind of sleep that comes easily on trains. A semi-conscious state where you are aware of your surroundings, but not fully engaged with them. The rhythm of the train becomes part of your dreams, creating strange landscapes that shift and blur with each curve of the track. You are dimly aware of the Stopstern perhaps, Newcastle certainly, each one marked by a change in rhythm, a slowing and stopping and starting again that penetrates even into sleep. But you do not fully wake for these stops, merely acknowledging them at some deep level before, drifting back into unconsciousness. At some point in the night, you check your watch groggily and see it is 2:30. You become aware that the character of the journey has changed. The train is climbing, working harder, its speed reduced from the swift pace of the level sections to something more labored. The exhaust beats of the locomotive are louder, more frequent, and you can hear the rhythmic chuff 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 as the pistons work to pull the heavy train up the grade. You have crossed into Scotland, though exactly when you cannot say. The border is unmarked on the railway, merely a point on a map that the train passes without ceremony in the dead of night. But you know it must be close now, or perhaps already behind you. And with that knowledge comes a small thrill of anticipation. You rise and part the curtain, pressing your face close to the cold glass. The moon has set, and the darkness outside is almost absolute, broken only occasionally by a distant light from a shepherd's cottage or a village. But even in that darkness, you sense a change in the landscape. The land feels more rugged here, more challenging. The train follows a valley between hills that rise black and massive on either side, their peaks invisible against the star-filled sky. This is the border country, that debatable land where Scotland and England blur together, a landscape of steep-sided valleys and wind-swept moors, of ruins left over from centuries of raiding and warfare. The air that seeps in through the crack in the window is noticeably colder now, carrying a freshness that seems to speak of high places and open country. You can smell peat smoke, that distinctive scent that is so characteristic of Scottish settlements, along with the more familiar odours of coal and steam. The train rounds a curve, and for a moment you catch a glimpse of lights ahead, a small station, perhaps, or a town. The train does not stop, however, but rushes through, the lights flashing past in an instant and then gone. Leaving only darkness once more, you return to your berth, pulling the blankets up to your chin. The compartment has grown cooler as the night has progressed, the steam heating struggling to keep pace with the dropping temperature outside. But it is not uncomfortable, merely cool enough to make the weight of the blankets welcome. You lie still, listening to the sounds of the labouring locomotive, feeling the slower but more powerful rhythm of the train as it climbs toward the summit of the grade, and then, gradually, the grade levels off. The locomotive's exhaust becomes less laboured, its rhythm more regular. The train begins to pick up speed once more, and you realize you have crested the high point of the journey, the divide between England and Scotland. From here, the line will descend into the lowlands, following the course of ancient glacial valleys, before beginning the final climb into the Highlands proper. You drift back toward sleep. But this time it is even lighter, more fragmented. You are aware of individual sounds, now the conductor passing along the corridor, the faint clink of his keys, the sound of a door opening and closing as he checks on the other passengers. Somewhere in another compartment, someone is coughing, a dry, persistent sound that travels through the thin walls. Outside, a hunting owl calls, its eerie cry audible for just a moment before the train carries you beyond its range. Time becomes fluid, losing its meaning in the darkness and the constant rhythm of the rails. Minutes and hours blur together, measured not by the clock, but by the changing sounds and sensations of the journey. The train slows for another stop at Edinburgh, perhaps, or Stirling, then speeds up again. The darkness outside begins to change quality, becoming not quite lighter, but somehow less absolute, as though the molecules of the night air themselves are preparing for the coming of dawn. You check your watch again. 5 o'clock. You have slept, after a fashion, for perhaps 5 hours, though it feels both longer and shorter than that. The train will reach Inverness at 7:30, which means there is still more than 2 hours of travel remaining. But you find you do not want to sleep anymore. The anticipation of arrival, the knowledge that you are entering the Highlands, has driven away the last vestiges of drowsiness. You sit up in your berth, arranging the pillows behind your back, and part the curtains fully to look out at the coming dawn. Dawn in the Highlands, the first sign of dawn, is not light but sound. The birds begin to call, their songs penetrating even the sealed windows of the compartment. You cannot identify the species, but their voices are wild and clear, speaking of open spaces and clean air. The train is traveling through Glengarry now, climbing once more, following a valley that cuts deep into the mountains. The darkness outside is no longer complete. You can make out shapes now, the bulk of mountains rising on either side of the track, their slopes still black but distinct, against a sky that has begun to show the first hint of color in the east. The transformation happens slowly, gradually, like a stage curtain rising in increments. First, the sky directly ahead begins to lighten, turning from black to dark blue, then to a lighter blue tinged with grey. The stars, so brilliant through the night, begin to fade, winking out one by one as though being extinguished. The mountain tops become visible, their peaks sharp against the growing light. And then, as the train rounds a curve, you catch your first glimpse of actual light on the horizon, a band of pale yellow-green, the color of spring leaves. That marks the place where the sun will soon rise. The train is traveling more slowly now, not from any mechanical difficulty, but because the track here is more challenging, winding through the mountains rather than cutting straight across the lowlands. The curves are tighter, the grades steeper, and the driver must exercise caution. But this slower pace is actually welcome, for it allows you to appreciate the landscape as it reveals itself in the growing light. The Highlands are unlike anything you see in England. The scale is different, more dramatic, more vertical. The mountains rise with stunning abruptness, their slopes covered in heather and bracken, broken here and there by outcrops of grey stone. Dark forests of pine and birch cling to the lower slopes, their branches still bare in this late autumn season, and everywhere there is water burns tumbling down rocky channels, lochs lying dark and still in the valleys, their surfaces just beginning to catch the light of the approaching dawn. The train follows the valley floor, the track running alongside a river that churns over rounded boulders, white with foam where it drops over small waterfalls. You can see the river quite clearly now, the light having grown strong enough to reveal details. The water is the color of peat, dark brown like tea, clear but stained by the countless miles it has flowed through the moorland. Herons stand in the shallows, patient and motionless, waiting for the small trout and salmon that swim in these waters. A village appears, clinging to the hillside above the track. The houses are small, built of local stone, their roofs of slate glittering with frost. Smoke rises from the chimneys, straight and grey in the still morning air. A single figure, bundled against the cold, walks along a path that winds up from the village toward the open moorland above. The train passes through without stopping, and the village falls away behind. Left to its quiet morning routine, the sky continues to brighten. The pale yellow-green band on the horizon expands upward, shading through a spectrum of colors amber and gold and deep orange, as though the sky itself is on fire. The sun has not yet risen, but its light is painting the undersides of high clouds, turning them into banners of pink and crimson that stretch from horizon to horizon. The mountain peaks catch this light first, their snow-covered summits glowing with an almost supernatural brilliance, while their lower slopes remain in shadow. And then, as the train rounds a final curve and emerges onto a straight section of track, the sun breaks the horizon. It rises with surprising speed, a sliver of brilliant gold that grows into a half circle and then a full disc, too bright to look at directly. The whole landscape transforms in an instant, as though a switch has been thrown. Shadows that were vague and indistinct become sharp and black. Colors that were muted become vivid, the purple of the heather, the brown of the dead bracken, the green of the pine forests, the white of the distant snow. The river beside the track sparkles with reflected light, and the frost that covers every blade of grass turns to diamond dust. You have to shield your eyes from the brilliance. The sun is low on the horizon, almost level with the train, and its light streams directly through your window, flooding the compartment with golden illumination. The whole world seems to have been reborn, transformed from the mysterious darkness of night into this bright, crystal-clear morning. The air, even seen through the window, looks clean and sharp, so clear that you can see for miles, picking out individual trees on hillsides miles away, seeing the pattern of walls and fences that divide the moorland into rough pastures. A loch comes into view, long and narrow, lying between steep hills. Its surface is absolutely calm, reflecting the mountains and sky with such perfect clarity that it is almost impossible to tell where reality ends and reflection begins. A fishing boat sits at anchor near the shore, its mast a single dark vertical line against the brightness. As the train passes, a flight of ducks takes off from the water, their wings beating in perfect synchronization, their bodies silhouetted against the rising sun. They circle once and then head away toward the far end of the loch, and in moments they are tiny specks against the mountains, and then they are gone. The train begins to descend, following the curve of the land down toward the coast. You can see, far ahead, a hint of open water, the Moray Firth, that great inlet of the North Sea that marks the northern limit of the Highland main line. Inverness lies on its southern shore, the capital of the Highlands, a market town grown prosperous on the wool trade and the coming of the railway. That is your destination, the end of this night's journey. Though you know that in this modern age of 1895, the railway continues beyond Inverness, pushing ever further north and west, bringing civilization and commerce to places that were, just a generation ago, as remote as the interior of Africa. The landscape has changed again. The wild mountains are giving way to gentler hills, the forests becoming more frequent, the signs of human habitation more common. Farmhouses appear, substantial stone buildings with well-tended gardens and outbuildings. Sheep graze in fields divided by dry stone walls. A man on horseback trots along a road that parallels the track, keeping pace with the train for a moment before falling behind. The world is waking up, beginning its day, and you are arriving just in time to see it come to life. You realize you are hungry, and thirsty, and desperately in need of washing. The small basin in your compartment provides cold water, but it is sufficient for a quick ablution. You splash your face, shocking yourself fully awake, and then dress, putting on a fresh collar and taking care with your appearance. The mirror shows you looking somewhat travel-worn but not disreputable. The night on the train has left you with a pleasant tiredness, not exhausted but gently fatigued, as though you have been on a long but enjoyable walk rather than simply lying in a bed. Your trunk will be delivered to your hotel by the railway company, but you gather your valise and the few items you had removed from it during the night. Everything is packed away, the compartment restored to something like its original configuration. The conductor will transform it back into its day mode after you disembark, making it ready for passengers traveling south. It is a remarkable system, This endless cycle of transformation and travel, rest and motion. The train slows once more, and this time, you know it is the final approach. Buildings appear beside the track warehouses, a goods depot, the backs of houses presenting their working faces to the railway. A factory of some kind, its chimney already smoking, its workers visible through grimy windows. A church spire rises ahead, its weathercock catching the morning light. And then, as the train rounds a final curve, you see the station ahead. A substantial building of red sandstone with multiple platforms and a covered overall roof. Inverness Station, the end of the line, your destination. The train comes to a gentle stop, the brakes hissing, steam escaping from various valves. The locomotive sighing as though exhausted from its night's work. Through the window, you see the platform is already busy despite the early hour. Porters hurry forward with their trolleys. Passengers waiting to board cluster near the carriage doors. A station master in a dark uniform and peaked cap walks along the platform, checking his pocket watch against the station clock. Noting with satisfaction that the train has arrived on schedule, you open your compartment door and step out into the corridor. Other passengers are emerging from their compartments, gathering their belongings, preparing to disembark. The conductor appears, touching his cap, wishing you a good morning and hoping you had a pleasant journey. You assure him that you did, very much so, and thank him for his attentiveness. He beams with professional pride and stands aside to let you pass. You step down from the carriage onto the platform, and the cold morning air hits you like a physical shock after the warmth of the compartment. It is clean and sharp, carrying the scent of peat smoke and the sea, with no trace of London's sulphurous fog. You breathe deeply, filling your lungs, feeling the clarity of it. This is Highland air, as different from the air of London as wine is from water. The station is beautiful in the morning light, its stonework glowing golden, its iron columns and roof trusses painted in the company's colours of dark green and cream. Advertisements on the walls proclaim the virtues of various hotels and shooting lodges, whiskey distilleries, and Highland tours. A bookstall at the far end of the platform displays newspapers and magazines, their headlines announcing the latest news from London, from the Empire, from the world beyond these mountains. You stand for a moment, simply breathing the clean air, watching the steam from the locomotive drift upward into the clear sky, listening to the sounds of the station, the calls of porters, the hiss of steam, the rumble of luggage trolleys, the slow, cooling ticks of the locomotive as its metal contracts. You have travelled through the night, covered hundreds of miles, crossed from England into Scotland, ascended from the lowlands into the highlands, all while sleeping in comfort in your private compartment. It is a miracle of the modern age, this ability to travel such distances with such ease. And yet it still retains something of the magical, the romantic, the adventurous. The station clock shows 28 minutes past 7. You are slightly early, the train having made good time despite the difficult terrain. You collect your valise from the platform where the porter has placed it. Decline his offer to fetch you a cab. You prefer to walk the short distance to your hotel and make your way toward the station exit as you walk along the platform. You pause once more and look back at the train. It sits there, still breathing steam, still radiating heat into the cold morning. The locomotive is a magnificent machine, its dark green paintwork gleaming, its brass fittings polished, its number 4472 painted in gold numerals on the side of the cab. The driver is visible in the cab, leaning out to speak with a station official, his face smudged with coal dust, his manner one of quiet satisfaction at a job well done. Behind the locomotive, the carriages stretch away down the platform, dark and solid and impressive, temporary homes to the hundreds of passengers who have made this journey through the night. You feel a moment of genuine gratitude toward this machine and the men who operate it, toward the engineers who designed it and the workers who maintain it, toward the whole complex system of railways that has made such journeys possible. A century ago, the journey you have just completed would have taken days, would have been uncomfortable and possibly dangerous, would have been impossible for anyone without considerable means. Now, it is routine, available to anyone who can afford a ticket, safe and comfortable and efficient. But you know, even as you think this, that the age of steam will not last forever. Already, there is talk of new technologies, electricity, internal combustions that may one day supplant the steam locomotive. Perhaps 50 or 100 years from now, people will look back on nights like this, on journeys like yours, with the same nostalgic wonder with which you might regard the coaching inns and post roads of your grandfather's youth. Perhaps they will consider it quaint, primitive even, this business of burning coal to boil water to turn wheels. But they will have lost something too. You suspect some sense of connection to the machine, some appreciation for the physical reality of power and motion that the steam locomotive makes so viscerally apparent. These thoughts occupy you as you walk through the station and out into the streets of Inverness. Arrival. Inverness in the morning light. The streets of Inverness are quiet at this early hour, though not deserted. The town is already beginning its day. Shopkeepers sweeping their doorsteps, delivery carts making their rounds, workers heading toward the mills and factories that have grown up along the banks of the River Ness. The town sits at the confluence of the river and the Moray, a strategic location that has made it important for centuries, first as a military stronghold, then as a trading centre, and now as the hub of the Highland Railway network. You walk slowly, in no particular hurry, savouring the freshness of the morning. The buildings here are mostly of stone, 3 and 4 stories tall, their facades reflecting the vernacular architecture of the region, solid, practical, built to withstand the harsh Highland winters. Many have date stones above their doors: 1823, 1847, 1869, markers of the town's steady growth through the Victorian era. The streets are cobbled, and your footsteps echo in the quiet morning, a pleasant sound that mingles with the cry of gulls wheeling overhead. The town centre is dominated by the castle, though not the ancient fortress one might expect. The current structure dates from the 1830s, built in a romantic neo-medieval style on the site of earlier fortifications. It sits on a low hill overlooking the river, its red sandstone walls glowing in the morning sun, its crenellated towers suggesting a martial past that has long since given way to civic administration. The castle now serves as the courthouse and county offices, a symbol of how far the Highlands have come from the clan wars and Jacobite risings of the previous century. You cross the bridge over the River Ness, pausing at its centre to look down at the water flowing beneath. The river is wide here, its banks lined with trees that have lost most of their leaves to autumn winds. The water flows strong and clear, its surface dimpled by the current, and you can see salmon holding in the deeper pools, preparing for their journey upstream to spawn. A man stands on the far bank with a fishing rod, casting his line with practiced ease, the line whistling through the air and settling on the water with barely a ripple. It is a scene of perfect tranquility, a moment captured in the amber light of early morning. Beyond the river, the town spreads out along the waterfront. a mix of residential and commercial buildings interspersed with churches and public buildings. The spires of 3 churches are visible from where you stand: Presbyterian, Catholic, and Episcopal, their different architectural styles speaking to the religious complexity of Scotland. Beyond them, the land rises toward the hills, where houses give way to fields and then to the open moorland that stretches away toward the mountains visible in the distance. You resume your walk, following the curve of the river toward your hotel. The Hotel Royal, recommended by friends who have visited before, sits on a prominent corner overlooking the river. A substantial 4-story building of grey stone with bay windows and a dignified Georgian facade. As you approach, you see that the front door is already open, a porter in livery standing ready to receive arriving guests. He sees you coming and steps forward with a professional smile. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to the Hotel Royal. Have you just arrived on the morning train from London?" You confirm that you have, and he takes your valise with a practiced motion, gesturing toward the entrance. "If you'll come this way, sir, we have your room prepared. I trust you had a comfortable journey." You assure him that you did, very comfortable indeed, and follow him into the hotel. The lobby is elegant without being ostentatious, decorated in the late Victorian style with dark wood paneling, Persian carpets, and comfortable leather chairs arranged around a fireplace where a coal fire is already burning, taking the chill off the morning air. A clerk behind the desk looks up and greets you by name. Your reservation has been noted and presents a register for you to sign. The formalities are quickly completed. Your trunk, the clerk assures you, has already arrived and has been taken up to your room. Would you care for breakfast? The dining room is open and they are serving a full Scottish breakfast. The thought of food suddenly becomes very appealing. The light meal in the dining car having long since been digested during the night's travel. You follow the porter up a broad staircase to the first floor, along a corridor with a thick carpet runner and gas lamps in brass wall sconces, to a door at the far end. The porter unlocks it with a flourish and stands aside to let you enter. The room is spacious and well appointed, with a large bay window overlooking the river. Your trunk sits at the foot of a substantial bed, its brass bedstead gleaming in the morning light. There is a wardrobe, a chest of drawers, a writing desk with paper and ink, a washstand with a large porcelain basin and ewer, and 2 comfortable chairs positioned to take advantage of the view. You tip the porter, who withdraws with a bow, and you are finally alone. You move to the window and look out over Inverness, over the river flowing below, over the town stretching away toward the mountains that rise in the distance. The journey that began last night in London has brought you here, to this place at the edge of the civilized world, where the Highlands begin in earnest. And though you are tired from the night's travel, though you long for a proper bath and a real bed, you feel a sense of satisfaction, of accomplishment even at having made this journey. Reflections on the journey, you sink into one of the chairs by the window and allow yourself a moment of complete relaxation. The tension of travel, the need to be alert, to keep track of your belongings, to maintain the social proprieties required in public spaces, all of this falls away, and you feel your muscles unknot, your breathing deepen. The chair is comfortable, upholstered in dark green velvet that matches the curtains, and the view from the window is peaceful and restful to the eyes. From this vantage point, you can see the railway station you left just 20 minutes ago. The train is still there, though preparations are being made for its return journey. You can see the locomotive being detached, running forward on a siding where it will be turned on a turntable before being coupled to the other end. of the train for the southbound journey. The carriages sit empty now, their passengers dispersed into the town, but by this evening, they will be full again with travelers heading south, retracing the route you traveled during the night. It strikes you that while you were sleeping, cocooned in your comfortable compartment, an entire world of activity was taking place around you. The driver and fireman in the cab of the locomotive, working through the night to maintain speed and keep to the schedule, watching the track ahead, adjusting the controls, reading the signals that would have been invisible to you behind your curtained window. The conductor making his rounds, checking on passengers, ensuring everything was in order. The staff in the dining car, preparing meals in that tiny galley, serving passengers with grace despite the constant movement of the train. The signalmen in their boxes along the line, setting the points and clearing the signals to allow your train safe passage. The station masters at York and Newcastle and Edinburgh and a dozen other stops, noting your arrival and departure, telegraphing ahead to report your progress. All of this human activity, this complex choreography of labor and coordination, was required to transport you safely and comfortably from London to Inverness. It is easy to take such things for granted in this age of progress, to assume that trains simply run as they should, that the system functions because that is its nature. But the truth is that behind every journey like yours lies countless hours of human effort. From the engineers who designed the locomotives and carriages, to the navvies who laid the track across mountains and through valleys, to the workers who maintain everything day by day, ensuring that the system continues to function reliably. The railway represents, in a very real sense, the triumph of human organization over natural obstacles. The distance between London and Inverness is not merely a matter of miles, but of the flat plains of the Midlands, the rolling hills of Yorkshire, the border country with its steep valleys and challenging gradients, and finally the Highlands themselves, where mountains rise thousands of feet and the weather can turn vicious without warning. To lay a railway through such country required not just engineering skill, but also vision, determination, and an almost stubborn refusal to accept natural limits. Your grandfather, you remember, made this same journey once, back in the 1830s, before the railway came. He travelled by stagecoach as far as Edinburgh, a journey that took 3 days and left him bruised and exhausted, sleeping in coaching inns of variable quality, enduring roads that were barely more than tracks in places. From Edinburgh to Inverness, he took another coach, another 2 days of bone-rattling discomfort, 5 days in total, and he counted himself lucky that the weather was fair and no axles broke. Now, you have covered the same distance in a single night, in comfort, arriving fresh enough to face the day ahead. This is what progress means, you think. Not just the invention of new machines, but the transformation of human experience, the expansion of what is possible. Your grandfather's generation grew up in a world where distance was an absolute constraint, where traveling a few hundred miles was a serious undertaking requiring days of time and considerable expense. Your generation has seen that constraint largely dissolved. You can board a train in London after an early dinner and arrive in the Scottish Highlands in time for breakfast. The world has become, in a very real sense, smaller, more accessible, more connected. And yet, you wonder if something has been lost in this transformation. The stagecoach journey, for all its discomfort, was an adventure, an experience that tested one's endurance and brought one into direct contact with the landscape and the people along the route. The coaching inns, the changes of horses, the conversations with fellow travellers. The slow revelation of the changing landscape, all of this gave the journey a richness, a texture that is perhaps lacking in the smoothness of rail travel. In your comfortable sleeping compartment, insulated from weather and landscape, you experience the journey as a kind of dreamlike transition, falling asleep in one place and waking in another, with the intervening miles reduced to a blur of darkness and rhythm. But then you remind yourself, it is easy to romanticize the hardships of the past when you are not actually enduring them. Your grandfather, if he were alive, would likely laugh at the idea of preferring stagecoach to railway. He spoke often of the misery of those old journeys, of arriving at an inn so exhausted that he could barely eat dinner, of spending 3 days recovering from the journey before he could attend to the business that had brought him north. The railway may lack the romance of the coaching age, but it has democratized travel, making it accessible to a much broader range of people, and has done so without sacrificing comfort or safety. These philosophical reflections occupy you for some time as you sit by the window, watching the morning life of Inverness unfold below. A church bell strikes 8 o'clock, its clear tone carrying across the town. More people are appearing on the streets now, the town fully waking to the day. Shops are opening, their proprietors standing in doorways to welcome the first customers. A milk cart makes its way along the street, the driver calling out his wares. Children in school uniforms walk in small groups toward the parish school, their voices high and clear in the morning air. You realize that you are tremendously hungry. The thought of breakfast, of hot food and strong tea becomes overwhelming. You rise from the chair, wash your hands and face in the basin on the washstand, check your appearance in the mirror, and make your way downstairs to the dining room. The Scottish breakfast, the dining room of the Hotel Royal, is a handsome space, long and high-ceilinged, with windows along one wall offering views of the river. The tables are set with white linen and good china, and though it is still early, several tables are already occupied. You recognize, by their dress and bearing, other travelers from the night train, now refreshed and ready to face whatever business or pleasure has brought them to Inverness. A waiter shows you to a table by the window, presents you with a menu, and returns moments later with a pot of tea. The tea is strong and hot, dark as mahogany, brewed in the Scottish style, and you drink it gratefully, feeling its warmth spread through your body. The menu offers a full Scottish breakfast, and you order it all. Porridge with cream, kippers, eggs, bacon, sausage, black pudding, grilled tomatoes, mushrooms, toast and marmalade. It is far more than you would normally eat, but the journey has given you an appetite, and you intend to indulge it. The porridge arrives first, served in a deep bowl, its surface smooth and inviting. You add cream and a spoonful of honey and taste it. It is perfect thick, but not heavy, slightly nutty, warming. This is proper Scottish porridge, made from oats grown in these northern latitudes, cooked slowly and with care. You eat it slowly, savoring each spoonful, while outside the window the river flows past, and the morning grows brighter. The rest of the breakfast follows in due course, each dish perfectly prepared. The kippers are smoked to perfection, their flesh flaking easily from the bones. The eggs are cooked exactly as you like them, the bacon crisp, the sausage rich and flavorful. The black pudding is a specialty of the region, and though you know some find it off-putting, you have acquired a taste for it. Everything is hot, everything is fresh, everything is delicious as you eat. You watch the other diners and listen to fragments of their conversations. A couple at the next table is discussing their plans for a tour of the surrounding countryside. A solitary gentleman is reading the morning newspaper, occasionally looking up to stare out the window with an abstracted expression. Three men in tweed suits and heavy boots are clearly going shooting, their conversation full of references to coveys and beaters and where the best birds are to be found. And at a corner table, an elderly woman sits alone, her breakfast barely touched, gazing out at the river with an expression of such profound sadness that you have to look away, feeling that you are intruding on a private grief. The diversity of humanity passing through this dining room, all of them brought here by the railway, all of them embarked on their own journeys and carrying their own stories, strikes you as remarkable. The railway has not just shrunk distance, it has brought together people who would otherwise never have met, has created new patterns of movement and interaction. The elderly woman might be traveling to visit a dying relative. The shooting party might be wealthy industrialists from Manchester seeking sport in the Highlands. The solitary gentleman might be a writer seeking inspiration in the northern landscapes. Each of them has a story, a reason for being here, and the railway has made their presence possible. You finish your breakfast and sit back, completely satisfied. Through the window, the sun has climbed higher, burning off the last traces of morning mist. The day is going to be beautiful, clear and cold, perfect Highland weather. You have no particular plans, no pressing obligations. Perhaps you will walk along the river, explore the town, visit the castle, or perhaps you will simply rest, recovering from the night's journey, preparing for whatever tomorrow may bring. But first, you return to your room, remove your traveling clothes, and prepare for a proper rest. The bed, when you finally lie down on it, is blissfully comfortable, a real mattress, proper pillows, sheets that smell of lavender and soap. The window is open slightly, admitting fresh air, and through it, you can hear the sounds of the town voices, the clatter of carts on cobblestones, the cry of gulls, the distant whistle of a train departing for the south. You close your eyes, and sleep claims you almost instantly, a deep, dreamless sleep very different from the fitful semi-consciousness of the night train. When you wake, hours later, it will be to the afternoon sun slanting through the window, to the sound of church bells calling the faithful to evensong, to a sense of profound rest and contentment. The memory of the journey, but in that moment before sleep, takes you completely. You find yourself thinking once more of the train, of that remarkable machine that carried you through the night. You remember the rhythm of the wheels, that endless clack-clack-clack that became the soundtrack to your dreams. You remember the view from the window as dawn broke over the highlands, the mountains emerging from darkness into light. You remember the warmth and security of your compartment, that small sanctuary moving through the larger world. You remember the conductor's courtesy, the dining car's elegance, the locomotive's power. Years from now, you think, when you are old and perhaps traveling itself has become difficult, you will remember this journey. You will remember the night train to the Highlands, and it will seem, in memory, like something from a different world, a lost age of steam and iron and gaslight. Perhaps by then, the railways themselves will have changed beyond recognition, or perhaps they will have been replaced by something entirely new, some technology you cannot now imagine. But this journey, this experience of traveling through the night in comfort and safety, of covering hundreds of miles while you slept, of waking to find yourself in a different country entirely, this will remain vivid in your memory. A perfect moment, caught in time like a fly preserved in amber, and perhaps decades hence, Someone else will read about journeys like yours and will wonder what it was like. Will try to imagine the experience from descriptions and timetables and faded photographs. They will know the facts, the distance covered, the time taken, the technical specifications of the locomotives and carriages. But will they be able to truly understand the experience, the sensation of lying in a swaying berth while the darkness flows past, of being lulled by the rhythm of the rails, of waking to mountain dawn? Will they understand the peculiar magic of rail travel in this age, the way it combines absolute security with a sense of adventure, the way it makes the impossible routine? You hope they will. You hope that somehow, despite the inevitable changes that time will bring, the essential experience of the journey will be preserved and understood, because this night train to the Highlands, this voyage through darkness toward light is more than just transportation. It is an experience of transition, of transformation, of being carried from one world into another. It is a small poem written in steam and iron, a nocturne composed by the railway companies and performed nightly by locomotives and crews all across the country. The rhythm returns to you now, in the drowsy moments before sleep. That fundamental heartbeat of the railway, clack-clack, clack-clack, clack-clack. It is the sound of progress, of connection, of a nation binding itself together with iron rails. It is the sound of possibility, of new worlds made accessible, of horizons expanded. And it is the sound that will carry you now into sleep, that will remain with you through dreams and into the rest of your life. A constant reminder of this journey, this night, this experience that you will never forget, the night train to the Highlands. Even the name has magic in it, suggesting mystery and romance, suggesting journeys both physical and metaphorical. And you, having made that journey, having experienced it in all its sensory richness, will carry it with you always, a private treasure, a memory of a night when you travelled through darkness and woke to light, when you crossed borders both geographical and personal, when you rode the rails through the heart of Britain and arrived, safe and sound and somehow changed, in the wild and beautiful Highlands. And so our journey ends, dear listener, as all journeys must. We have travelled together through time, back to an autumn night in 1895, and forward again to this present moment. We have boarded a train in the heart of London and alighted in the northern reaches of Scotland. We have experienced the rhythm of the rails, the comfort of a sleeping car, the transformation of landscape from city to mountain. We have witnessed, through the lens of one traveller's experience, the marvel of Victorian rail travel at its finest. If you enjoyed this nocturnal journey, if it helped you find rest or simply transported you to another time and place, I would be grateful if you would take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Nocturne of History. Your support makes it possible to create these long-form historical narratives, these guided explorations of the past. And I would love to hear from you in the comments. What historical journey should we take next? What period, what place, what experience would you like to explore as you drift towards sleep? Until our next journey together, may your rest be peaceful, your dreams be vivid, and may you always find comfort in the rhythms of the past. Good night and safe travels through the landscape of dreams.